was still a township, and it had about 8,000 people in it. And after the discovery of coal and iron ore, celebrating technology, but they're celebrating technology in a way that they're not hiding that it's man-made, and they're not hiding that it's made by a machine. So if you look at all the ornamentation around the building, you see repetitive ornament that it looks like it's produced by a machine. And I wanted to point your attention over to the former dollar bank.
With the lion faces, above the door over here is the goddess Mercury, which is, in Roman mythology, was the goddess of profit, trade, and commerce, appropriate to a bank building. And you see a lot of the Corinthian columns, typical to Roman art. The Wick building is primarily Grecian, which is, you've got the Greek key, which is that labyrinth type border that goes, if you're looking at the green light, it's that white part of the brown building that goes right across from end to end. The circular windows, the ancones on the top is primarily Greek art. And then we have this building, which does taper in, if you imagine a pyramid tapering in. And it has the palm leaves, it has depicts water, which is important in the desert for in Egyptian culture. You have two faces of an Egyptian princess on either column that's sticking on the outside facade. And if you would go into the building, on the other end of the building, see where the bronze actually comes across the face of the building and goes down. The last piece of bronze is an entrance to the elevators that go up into this building. And if you go in and look up at the ceiling, you will see the palm leaves and the colors that were used only in the Egyptian art. And because they couldn't carve into the sandstone because it would break away, they would paint instead. And so you will see the colors yellow, black, red, and the orangish color that you see in the Peggy Ann building, which has that red awning that sticks out over the
They had a lot of noise and a lot of inappropriate, incompatible things happening. So city planning started actually in Cleveland around the turn of the century. Then Daniel Burnham from Chicago came to Youngstown, and his client was George Wick. George Wick, and for people that may be not familiar with the development of Youngstown, the West End tended to have the finer stores. The East End was, in some cases, the older part of town. There were a lot of immigrant stores there. Very popular part of town. A mixture of bars, restaurants. Bruley Brothers, for example, was on the East End. You had discount stores on that side too. And then on the West End, you had catered to the more stable commerce in town. So you see that in many cases, the larger buildings are on this end of the town. The buildings are of larger scale. I'm not saying though that there weren't discounts. There were some discounts. That's a non-profit organization that some legislation required a lot of the buildings downtown. The city transferred the buildings that have purchased at one point to this organization. The organization had control of many of the buildings in the city. This building is a Federal Bank building, and this is a facade that dates from, I'd say, the circa 1950s. And this is now presently a nightclub, and they've maintained some of the elements of the old bank, but this is, it's called adaptive reuse. It's when you take a building and use it in a different way. You adapt the building to either a present-day use, or you adapt it to what your needs are at a different point. If you look at the condition of the building, you kind of forget that when you see this, but you also see a panorama of different parts of the downtown, panoramas of different parts of downtown, and also everything that you see on here is theater related. The Warner Brothers settled in Youngstown and got their career started in Youngstown, actually on this corner where the Children's Services building is. The Warner Brothers like other people at the time. The reason why you don't see many buildings from that era is not only because we should get off the screen. Yeah. Well, you don't see of a house fire or a building fire, but you see representations of some of the earliest buildings. First Educators here is probably one of the oldest surviving buildings in downtown Youngstown. It's First Educators is an investment corporation. Dan Rossi is this building. As you can see below the 1970s, this building is a terracotta building in downtown. It's generated a lot of interest throughout the years because of its placement downtown. It's got a overall